Well, the Prime Minister says there's never been a more exciting time to be an Australian with our nation on the brink of an innovation revolution. So can we make the shift from a lucky country to a smart one? First question tonight comes from Pete Cooper.
Thanks, Tony. I love Aussie innovation like the next guy, and quantum and nano is fantastic university research, but the rest of the world is literally sprinting past us. My question is about the innovation statement, $1 billion. While we're doing that, over 4 years, San Francisco has created $500 billion in tech startups. Shenzhen is the Internet of Things capital. Those startups are largely not tied to university research. University research is important, but most of the tech startups are doing without it. Why aren't we supporting them in the budget statement and the innovation statement? Why are we doing slow lane innovation strategies?
Wyatt Roy.
Well, thanks, Pete. Look, I am deeply optimistic about what we can achieve in this country, and I have no doubt in decades to come we can be a regional, if not global, leader in innovation. But we have to create something that is uniquely Australian. So we shouldn't try and emulate or copy Silicon Valley while we can learn something from there. We shouldn't try and just perfectly replicate what's happening in Tel Aviv or Israel or Singapore. We have to create a uniquely Australian innovation ecosystem. And we have some really strong strengths to play to. We have an enormous amount of really bright, talented people, predominantly young people. I know this because there's 20,000 Australians currently working in Silicon Valley. The Foreign Minister likes to call us a lifestyle superpower. And when you are a young, bright, talented person, you can pick any country on earth to start, grow and scale your business. And our lifestyle is acting as a magnet for attracting the best and brightest. And I think the really big thing that will drive innovation in the future is a realisation that we're not a marketplace of 23 million people, but we're a marketplace or a beachhead with access to a global marketplace, particularly with a billion people coming into the middle class in our north. So if we play to those strengths, and the National Innovation and Science Agenda looks at all of those things, but it also builds on a few key areas. The cultural change that we need to see in our country, so we need to embrace more risk, we need to accept failure, we need to celebrate success, how we attract more capital, and particularly private sector capital for investment into those startups that you're talking about, greater collaboration between startups and industry. If we attack these things, I think that we can not only catch up, but be a world leader in our own right.
Wyatt, the questioner... Well, actually, I'll go back to you. You've got your hand up.
I agree with most of the things you said, Wyatt, and I think it's great to have someone like you doing the role, but the money doesn't match the words, mate.
Well, yeah,
less
actually,
than
Wyatt,
1% in incubators tied to universities.
Yeah.
Like, really, you know, the Uber's doing 4 times what you'd put over 4 years in 4 months.
Yeah, I mean, it's not only Uber. The one I was going to mention was Samsung. One company, 1 year, $18.6 billion in research and development. Compare that to $250 million a year the government has put up.
So the first point that I would make is, while it's important that when we're using taxpayers' money, we are investing in the entire innovation ecosystem or that spectrum, but real success for me is when we generate greater private sector involvement in this space. So to give you an example, Israel, which is held up as the greatest example of this, they have the greatest number of startups per capita of any country on earth. They have the greatest number of entrepreneurs per capita of any country on earth. And the government investment is actually declining, but private sector investment is going through the roof because they've pulled the right policy levers when it comes to taxation, venture capital, to ensure that that private sector investment's happening. I think that's critically important for us in this debate. The other point that I would make is, just because we're making strong investments into greater industry collaboration around universities and getting that research out into the real world to create these new businesses and products and services, it doesn't mean that that detracts from what's happening in startups. And I actually get very frustrated in this debate when people say it's one versus the other. And the analogy that I kind of use is, you know, that taco ad where you've got the girl where everyone's arguing about whether you want hard tacos or soft tacos, and she turns around and she says, well, why can't we have both? If you look at incredible innovation hubs across the globe, whether that is in Silicon Valley, where you've got great stuff coming out of Stanford, or it's in Tel Aviv, where you've got high-end research in the defence industries.
Well, I've got to clock on you because I need to hear from the other panellists.
You also have a very vibrant startup ecosystem, and we can do both as a country. Okay.